I'm Carl Kolosna with the Comprehensive Planning staff team. I'm joined by my colleagues Brooke Ganser, Nikki McDonald, Kayla Seibel, and Lisa Miller. As we get started with some backgrounds, I invite you all, if you're willing, to share in the chat box your name, the neighborhood or community you're a part of, and to share one thing that you value about the Durham community. We'll take a moment to let folks joining by phone share their responses in a few minutes, and just let us know you'd like to share by hitting star and then 9 to raise your hand. So again, we would invite you to share in the chat box your name, the community or neighborhood that you're a part of, and share one thing that you value about the Durham community. We could go to the next slide. Great, thank you. So as folks are filling in the chat, we're going to get started. So we know that folks are coming to this meeting with different background information about this project and different levels of understanding about how the comprehensive plan impacts our community. So we're going to start by talking about how we're approaching this work and what has been done so far. Our intent this evening is to introduce you all to the current engagement opportunities for the comprehensive plan. And we're going to walk through how to use the tools that we've created for engagement and share ways that you can engage your fellow community members on this work over the next couple of weeks as we're finishing out this phase of engagement. The last 30 minutes of this session will be an opportunity for feedback from you all on this work. So if you've got comments or thoughts, there will be a chance to share those at the end of this meeting. And I see we've got some responses coming in, what people value, where they're from, everything like that, which is great. Thank you so much. So we're going to get started with an introduction and an overview. So our work on the new comprehensive plan started in the summer of 2019. As our work began, the city's equitable community engagement blueprint was being developed, and the city and the county were both beginning to work towards more equitable engagement. Through early conversations with our colleagues in the Neighborhood Improvement Services Department, we established a commitment to work towards equitable engagement for the comprehensive plan based on the equitable community engagement blueprint. So let's talk about what a comprehensive plan is and how it has and how it can impact equity in our community. Our comprehensive plan directs what can be built where in Durham. It guides what size and kinds of homes can be built in different parts of the community, where schools and businesses can be located, and where streets should be built. The plan acts as a blueprint for how Durham will develop today and in the future. The plan includes recommendations and guidance for big decisions that a local government may make. For example, how and where should farmland be created or preserved? How can we connect more residents to jobs, housing, and schools? What are Durham's infrastructure needs, like water, sewer, transportation, and other services? And what kind of environmental protections should we have? How should Durham care for its existing neighborhoods and longtime residents, particularly those who have been ignored or harmed by big decisions in the past? Durham looks the way it does because previous plans and policies determined how it could grow and develop. In the past, government and private decisions about where to locate land uses, both desirable and less desirable, have not been equitable. This is not an accident and is one of the primary ways that racial discrimination is seen in our physical environment. For example, less desirable industrial land uses like incinerators, landfills, factories, and salvage yards have been placed within or near traditionally Black neighborhoods and away from traditionally white neighborhoods. At the same time, desirable land uses that are necessary for people to access daily resources, like small commercial areas and parks, are lacking or missing in many traditionally Black neighborhoods. Equitable access to the benefits of growth, development, and land use decisions are foundational in our current work to determine where different land uses should be located in the future. So with all of that in mind, we began this project in the fall of 2019 and winter of 2020 with the listening and learning engagement for this project. We heard from over 1,000 residents what they wanted in an ideal Durham and what else was on their mind about Durham. With all of that input from residents, we asked, how do we listen to, respect, and honor the voices of residents who've been disinvested in and actively harmed by planning in the past? And how do we turn that lived experience into community goals and objectives? The community goals and objectives that were adopted by the county commissioners and city council last summer describe a clearly articulated vision for our residents for Durham's future. So now comes the hard work of translating this vision from our community into the technical planning tools that impact how land is used in our community. The new comprehensive plan will be made up of words and a map. The map will show a desired future place type for every property in the city and the county. The words include policy recommendations, which will be the focus of engagement next spring. These policies will lay out instructions for how the planning department and the rest of Durham local government will work to make the vision of the community goals and objectives a reality, because there are limits to how much of our community's vision can be articulated solely through the place type map. We've developed a draft community-wide place type map. The intent of this map is to apply the community's vision to actual places in our community. Our engagement over the next few weeks and from the preceding couple of months is focused on hearing from how you can better reflect the community vision in the draft map. The place type map will replace the future land use map from our current 2005 comprehensive plan. Since 2005, that map has been used to guide growth, plan where new services will be needed, and make decisions about whether to approve certain kinds of new development. However, the categories in the 2005 map are very general, and they do not provide enough detail about what places should be like. The proposed place type map includes more detailed information in the place type descriptions about what new development should look like and how it should function to serve residents and workers, and how it should be served by city and county services. So to close out the background on the project so far, we wanted to share some highlights of the kinds of places that residents want to see that came through in the community goals and objectives. Residents want all neighborhoods to have safe and easy walkable access to schools, community centers, shopping areas, restaurants, green spaces, all integrated within and around neighborhoods to allow us to access daily needs, connect with one another, and to build relationships. Residents want to see neighborhoods change incrementally to incorporate a variety of housing options that are affordable and attainable to those with the least access to housing. Residents want to see an improved transportation network and connectivity throughout Durham by prioritizing residents who walk, bike, roll, or ride transit. Residents want to see proposed developments that preserve or restore the surrounding natural areas and promote and encourage walkability. When vacant lots in already developed areas are filled in with new uses, Residents want to see this development fit in with the scale of the neighborhood and provide access to daily needs. Finally, residents want to see some of the car-oriented places, like shopping areas with large parking lots, incrementally change through the addition of buildings and retrofits of existing sites so that these places can become more walkable with safe pedestrian, bike, and transit access to and from the site. So we have a short video to share now that talks about the different pieces of the comprehensive plan, and we'll have a little bit of time for questions and answers on all this information following that video. So we're going to share that video now.
Hello, this is a presentation brought to you by the Durham City County Planning Department about the different Hello, this is a presentation brought to you by the Durham City County Planning Department. Hello, this is a presentation brought to you by the Durham City County Planning Department about the different pieces of the comprehensive plan. Our community is constantly changing. Think about your neighborhood. What has changed? What has stayed the same? Change in our community has impacts for residents who live in Durham today. Many residents in Durham have not benefited from this change and have been actively harmed by it. We need a better plan that can help manage this change in a way that benefits all residents. In Durham, the City County Planning Department regulates how land is used. There are rules about what each property can be used for, called zoning. These rules also regulate what developers are allowed to build. Planning decisions affect how our neighborhoods look, how we access the resources we need, and what infrastructure is needed to support life in Durham. Over time, local government has regulated land in ways that give some people more access than others. Access can mean access to better schools, jobs, transportation, or green spaces. Think about your neighborhood. Can you afford to live there? Are there grocery stores, schools, or parks that you can easily and safely get to? What's missing? What do you need more of? The rules in Durham need to be rewritten to work towards complete communities where everyone has access to the things they need, particularly those who have not had this access in the past. To start rewriting the rules, the Durham Planning Department needs your help to create a new comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan outlines a community vision in the form of policies and a map that say what should be built where in Durham. In practice, a comprehensive plan's place type map and policies are used together to check if what a developer is proposing to build matches what the community wants to see. The place type map and policies help guide decisions made by elected officials about whether development should be approved. Also, the place type map and policies can help us decide if new zoning districts should be created to match what the community wants to see and can help work towards greater access to the things we need. As our community grows and changes over time, we will need to invest in the infrastructure to sustain our neighborhoods. Staff will use the place type map to understand where future water, sewer, or transportation demand might be based on what kind of development is expected where, and plan for new or upgraded infrastructure projects. Think of the comprehensive plan as a roadmap to the future we want to build together. How would you shape Durham? Thank you so much for watching. Please visit engagedurham.com to learn more about the Durham Comprehensive Plan and get involved today.
All right, great. Thank you, Brooke. And I apologize, we had a little bit of technical difficulties there. This is our very last one of these community meetings, and they've been going pretty smoothly. So of course, it's always the last one where we run into a few issues. Before we go into some more detail about the place types and the map, we just wanted to pause and find out if there are any questions about the information that we've shared so far. If you have a question, please feel free to ask it in the chat or use the Zoom function to raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask a question real quick. So we'll see if anybody has any questions. I know it may take a minute to type that in or to raise your hand, so we'll give it a couple of moments for folks. And again, we'll have a question and answer opportunity at the end of this meeting as well. So if you think up something while we're going through the rest of the information, feel free to send it over in the chat and we'll be sure to address it. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything come in right immediately. Usually when I say that, that's right about when questions start coming in. So that's a great question. We've got a question in the chat. How long will we be taking citizen input? What's the deadline for comments or questions? So the phase of engagement that we are doing right now, which is specifically about the place type map, is going to be closing at the end of January. But we want to be very clear that this is just the first opportunity for engagement on the place type map, and there will be more engagement phases in the spring and likely the summer of this year as we're putting together the full plan. And then when the plan begins the formal adoption process, which we're hoping will start in the fall of this year, there will be another round of public comments at the Planning Commission and the Joint City County Planning Committee and City Council and County Commissioners as this goes through. So there's plenty of opportunities for engagement over the next year on pretty much all aspects of this plan. That's a good question. So we've got another question in the chat. Aside from making sure uses do not actively harm people in Durham, such as having industrial right next to residential, why do land uses need to be so prescribed? So that's a good question. And that's something that we're trying to move in a direction where land uses are a little bit less prescribed than they are in the current future land use map. So the current future land use map really only talks about uses, and it says, here's a parcel and here are what the uses that are allowed on it. With the place types, we're trying to include more information about character and design and things that really make a place feel like a place more than just the use that it's in. So we're trying to focus in conversations on places where bigger change is likely or possible. So that's the other thing, is we've got many areas in the city and in the county for a variety of reasons that may not experience as much change. Maybe they have special zoning districts applied to them, or they're existing neighborhoods that have been around for a really long time. We may have other areas that potentially could have more change, and we want, as part of the place types, to be able to characterize that and give a little bit more detail to that. We've got another question. With all of the residential development happening, what considerations will be given to industrial uses? Will they get pushed farther into the county? Let's see, we've got a number of comments coming in. Sorry, just a number of comments coming in quickly. So with residential development happening, what considerations are there going to be given to industrial uses? Industrial uses, we do have a number of place type designations that are shown around industrial uses, and those are included as the map, in the map as well. I'll also say we have a document, an industrial land use study that is used to make assessments and guides. And luckily, I've actually got Brooke Ganser here on our team who may be able to speak to this for a second, who was working on making an update to that industrial land use study.
Yeah, for sure, Carl. So that study is kind of an interim study to help us through this process before the comprehensive plan is adopted. But it looks at industrially designated land in our current future land use map, or what will be soon the new place types. And there's a number of considerations that we take into account for what areas make industrial land uses suitable. So we do take into consideration the proximity of residential areas, of environmental considerations as well. Is there a steep slope? Are there nearby environmental areas that need to be protected? We also consider proximity to local and major roads, proximity to railroads. So this is something that is in place right now to help us when new developments come in to use, so we can make a good decision moving forward on whether or not a development should be industrial or not. And we'll continue to kind of think through this with the updates with the place type map. If you see any specific areas on our current place type map on Social Pinpoint, please feel free to make a comment, and we'll take that into consideration as well.
Thanks for that additional information on that, Brooke. I think we wanted to call on Hillary, who has their hand raised. You should be able to speak now if you want to go ahead.
Thank you for unmuting me. I'm blind, so chat is really stressful. By the time I've typed in one word, half an hour is gone.
I understand. Yeah, feel free to just speak.
So I just wanted to put out there, which I'm sure you're all aware of, and somebody else has brought this up, to get a full spectrum input from the community. I'm going to speak out on behalf of those with disability, and this process is amazing to me, and it's so important to me, and I'm glad you're doing it, but it's highly visual. So most of us who want community and walking community, most of us who are blind, for example, or who have disability in general, be it wheelchair or other disability or are elder, are probably going to want the same thing. And we are the ones that have the least amount of access in terms of technology and mapping. So I just want to put out there that I don't know how you're going to reach these people, but I think they need to be included. And I know Lisa knows this, but I just don't know how you're going to troubleshoot that. That's all.
Thanks, Hillary. Yeah, I really appreciate your perspective and sharing your experience. We'll keep working on it together.
It's just more than me is the problem. And yeah,
I understand.
problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
We've got a few more questions in the chat that we'll read out, and then we're going to need to shift gears, but we'll definitely have time if folks want to keep adding questions or comments in the chat. We'll be making sure to read those out loud so everyone can hear those. So we've got a question about future plans to build new infrastructure, whether those will cause displacement of residents. This is something that's come up as a strong concern as we've done engagement, as you all can imagine, throughout the project so far, and is reflected in a couple of the objectives that have been adopted. So this is something that we'll be looking at in the development of policies, which is what we'll be engaging on in the spring, is the first draft of policies. So there'll be more to come on that. We've got a question about how comments on the place types will be compiled. Will they be read and considered? People who live in areas that will be affected by rezoning of larger empty properties know what issues rezoning to higher density housing will present. So all of the comments, so first of all, we've made a commitment to transparency with all of this. So we will be collecting and sharing all of the input that we've gotten from folks. It will not have folks' identities attached to it, but it will be sharing everything that we've heard. We'll be going through all of that as we propose to make changes to the map and helping folks understand how decisions about changes are made. We will be reading and considering everything that we hear from folks. And just the point about folks being affected by rezoning, we know that's an important thing for folks. And I just wanted to clarify, this map is not the zoning. This is looking towards the future. So if somebody wants to change the zoning, then this map will be what guides what changes are appropriate. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear. We've also got, so the question, doesn't use factor into protecting residential neighborhoods from an industrial site being allowed right next door? Yeah, we're trying to balance. We know that use matters, but in many cases, being too specific about uses or trying to separate some uses is problematic. So we're trying to make sure that we have the right uses that are allowed together, and then being really careful about the uses that are maybe not as good of neighbors by their nature, making sure that we're placing those in locations that account for that. We've got a comment. Many residents don't even know about this comprehensive plan. That means the feedback you get may not be representative of neighborhood views on rezoning of nearby areas. Yeah, this has been, as you all are aware, a really challenging time to be going through this project. We're doing a lot of things to try and reach folks that don't have the same access to digital means, to being able to come to a meeting like this, going out and reaching folks in order to get a more representative group of folks that we're getting input from. We also are certainly relying on other residents to help us share information about the plan. And if you think it's important, then why others should think it's important and get involved. And we're always open to hearing suggestions about how we can do this work better, that we can incorporate in engagement as we go forward. One last thing, and then we'll transition to the next piece where Brooke's going to talk a little bit more about place types and the map. We've got a comment here. Aside from industrial, will there be a loosening of zoning types to allow for some businesses mingling with certain residential profiles? Yeah, it doesn't govern. Never mind. You just said this place type map doesn't govern zoning. Am I right? So the place type map is different than the zoning. It is something that will influence decisions by elected officials about changes to the zoning that's in place right now. So we have heard from a lot of folks that they're interested in having more neighborhood scale services that help them access things that they need on a daily basis. So we'll be looking as we start to implement the comprehensive plan, how do our zoning districts need to either be changed, or what new zoning districts do we need to create in order to make sure that we have a zone that folks are comfortable with having in a neighborhood setting on, maybe a little bit larger street at the edge of the neighborhood where there's opportunities for commercial and some of those daily needs kinds of things. So we're definitely looking at that, as well as trying to end up with a zoning district that does actual mixed use development. So places where there's more opportunity for a combination of jobs, retail, if retail keeps existing, and residential. So we're going to be looking at all of those as we implement the plan. So thanks everyone for your questions on this. There'll be more time, as Carl shared at the last portion of the meeting, the last third of the meeting. But for now, I will hand it off to Brooke.
Thanks, Lisa. And good evening, everyone. My name is Brooke Ganser, and I will be walking through the second part of our agenda. So we'll now transition to talk about some place type examples, discuss how we use place types in practice, and then we'll show specifically how you can provide feedback on the place type map and the place type guide. So generally, we anticipate that some areas in Durham are less likely to change or will not experience a lot of change over the next couple of decades. Some examples of places like these are parks and protected green spaces, as shown on the left of a park, or established residential areas, as shown on the right, where there are small lots and many different property owners. You may still see some renovations or changes to the outside of these buildings, or additions of smaller houses behind existing homes, but we don't expect large-scale physical changes within neighborhoods. Oops, let me go back. But we do anticipate that some areas in Durham will experience more change over the next couple of decades. Places that are more likely to change in Durham may include land without existing buildings, as shown on the left of a field or forested area, the image in the middle of a large parking lot, and older shopping centers like on the right that are more suburban in character, again with those large parking lots or spaces for new buildings. To demonstrate the concepts that we've been talking about, what we are engaging on now, and how it applies to the real world, here's an example of a place in Durham that could see significant change over time. This is a Google map view of one of the commercial areas along Hillsborough Road at Highway 15501. This area currently provides goods and services to Durham residents. And we can see that there are existing restaurants, grocery, big box stores, personal services, and other shops. This area of Durham is served by bus lines with bus stops, sidewalks in some places, and is served by city water and sewer. So it could be an area where some of the lots here see the addition of new buildings or renovations. These two images show the commercial area. You can see large properties with large parking areas and standalone stores or large strip malls. There's also a lot of impervious surfaces in this area, meaning land that is covered in concrete or asphalt where rainwater cannot pass through the soil, and this causes flooding when it rains. Some of these lots have buildings or structures on them that have minimal green space. So any new development in the area would not involve clear cutting a forest or disrupting protected natural areas like you may see in places on the edge of town. When we think about places like this and how it may change in the future, we take in a few considerations, including the things I mentioned about existing conditions, what patterns we're seeing in development recently, and how the sites might be served or are currently served by infrastructure and services. We also consider community input and engagement that may have been done in these places in the past and what residents want to see there. A lot of times, we are not always sure what residents want to see. This is why we have an initial draft place type map for Durham residents to share feedback on specific places and geographies that you know because you live and experience these places every day. Specifically for this commercial area, our team looked at how the area currently has large big box stores, parking lots, and restaurants. It is also along a bus route with quite a few transit riders. That service is currently every 30 minutes, but might be a location that would make sense to increase frequency of buses in the future. So because of these characteristics, this area could see change in the future that adds more buildings and destinations to what are currently large parking areas. What looks like on the map is a place type designation called a transit opportunity area. And this describes an area with a mix of services, jobs, and homes that could become walkable and accessible to nearby residents and serves the surrounding neighborhoods with a focus on bus connections to other areas. As a reminder, the place type map is accompanied by the place type guide, which provides details on what the place type is. A snapshot of the place type guide description for the transit opportunity area place type can be seen here on the left in English and on the right in Spanish. The description here reads that transit opportunity areas are moderately sized places found throughout our community at the junction of major transit stops. The place type designation impacts what happens in an area. The place type that's assigned right now, the transit opportunity area, would mean a lot of change, and that kind of change would look like a moderately sized area with new buildings, including new commercial and residential buildings, and is well connected by sidewalks, bike paths, and bus service. It should be a dense area with buildings that close together, but also designed in a way that serves residents who are using this as a transfer point and seeks to minimize negative impacts on the surrounding neighborhoods. If that kind of change is not what the community wants to see in this area, then another place type that would fit here could be the suburban commercial place type. The suburban commercial place type looks similar to what is currently there now, with opportunity for new buildings to be added to underused parking areas, but maybe less compact with buildings just a little bit farther apart. We still envision this kind of place improving over time in terms of sidewalk connectivity and green space, but it is a smaller change. If this is something you have thoughts on, would love to hear your input on the map, and we do have discussion time at the end of this meeting. For this round of engagement, we want the community to give us feedback on the draft map and guide. The big opportunity with this process is that residents have a first say in what areas in Durham should look like in the future before a project is proposed and before an application is being reviewed by elected officials to consider new development. Staff has relied heavily on past engagement to make this initial draft, but we need your help to understand what changes should be made. Just another note about the place type categories. Durham is a big place, and this plan covers both the city and county. So our places range from very dense, urban, and walkable to rural, agricultural, and large open spaces. We have 20 different place types in the guide that are supposed to encompass the range of places but still be broad categories. Another part of the plan that helps us understand how to guide new development includes the comprehensive plan policies that are being worked on right now. These policies are things that we cannot easily map and are crucial to guiding how development should occur, not just what development should look like. Policies consider things like how development should fit into the surrounding area, who the development is serving, and other details like street trees, sidewalks, green space, things like that. Basically, place types provide a general idea of what different areas should be in the future, and we can get more specific as we go along in the planning process with policies. We are working with groups of residents and staff to begin brainstorming policies right now. So draft policies will be included in community-wide engagement this coming spring. Okay, so with that, I just want to briefly show the engagement tools that we have developed. I will have to reshare my screen for that. So please just bear with me a second. All right, are you all able to see this? Maybe my team can just chime in really quick, just to make sure.
I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Kayla. All right, so again, I just want to briefly show the engagement tools that our team has developed, just so you know where to find them and how to provide feedback. All right, so engagement this fall is focused on hearing about the types of places you would like to see in your neighborhood in the future. Place types are used to describe and map the kinds of places we want to see in Durham within the future. We drafted a place type map based on previous comprehensive plan engagement and would love to hear what you think. We want to know what you would add or change. The final map will help guide growth and development for every property in the city and the county. This screen is showing the Comprehensive Plan Social Pinpoint website, where you can see what phase the project is in and how to participate and provide input. So again, the focus of this phase of engagement is on the place type map. The map is made of place types, which are categories that describe how a place may look in the future and what the community wants to see there. The map shows where the place types are located on every piece of land in Durham. So scrolling down to the community meetings part of the web page. On this page, are the community meeting registration links. Hopefully you all found this information on Social Pinpoint or on the Engage Durham Comprehensive Plan homepage helpful when you signed up for tonight's meeting. Please help us share this engagement site and the recordings of past meetings like this with your friends and neighbors so they can get involved in this work as well before the January 31st deadline. So now we scroll down to the engagement buttons. There are 3 different engagement tools we're going to talk about: the place type map, the place type guide, and the resident engagement toolkit. To get started on the map, you can click the place type map button. This is an interactive map, meaning you can zoom in and out, read about the proposed place type for an area, and add comments. This map is also accompanied by Spanish text on the side. The splash screen gives instructions on what to do here, and you can dismiss it by clicking "I agree to the above terms and conditions." You must check the box for the terms to move on, which is simply the explanation you see on the screen. I will check the box. Once you check the box and click OK, you will first see the map. It will be zoomed out all the way so you can see all of Durham County. On the right-hand side, you have a legend. This legend includes all the draft place types. They are hyperlinked, so you can click on each one to open the place type guide description and read more about what they mean. So for example, if you click the transit opportunity area place type, a new tab will appear with the description in English and in Spanish. So now back to the map. The other legend items include an urban growth boundary and a future growth area. The urban growth boundary is a line staff is proposing that city water and sewer not be extended past to keep those areas mostly rural and protect our environmental resources, shown here. And the future growth areas, which are generally found adjacent to the urban growth boundary, are places that could see significant change if the city decides to add water, sewer, or fire service in those areas in the future. You can see it here. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see more tools. The plus button allows you to zoom in. You can also scroll with your mouse or double click to zoom in. You have to be pretty closely zoomed in to be able to add a comment to the map. The minus button allows you to zoom out. You can also scroll with your mouse to zoom out. There's a printer button available on the left-hand side if you would like to print the map. This tool allows you to export a PDF copy of the view you're zoomed in at. There's also an option to change the background displayed on the map if you prefer to look at a different background satellite view or see additional map information. There are some other helpful tools you can explore as well, but those are all the basics. So with that, we are ready to begin adding feedback. To find a location based on an address, you can use this address bar up here to type in a location. So let's say you're interested in what place type City Hall is designated in. You can type in 101 City Hall Plaza in the search bar and press enter. And the map will zoom to the location you entered. You can see this blue color, an acronym DT, and that just means it is the downtown place type. So here you can click on the actual property and a pop-up will appear. This pop-up has a link to the place type guide if you need to access more information. You can also click the button to add a comment, which will appear on the map after you submit a short survey. We're really interested in hearing information from you that is tied to specific locations in Durham to inform changes to the map and understand what you need in your community. When you click Add Comment, you will be brought to a new tab. In this survey, you may choose to comment on a specific property's place type, or you can choose general area, neighborhood, or intersection. A series of questions will appear so you can help us understand more about what you'd like to see in this area. Additionally, if you are commenting on a general area, please give us a description of where you're commenting on in order to move on. So for our purposes, I'll just write City Hall. So scrolling down, there's a second page that will take you to the demographic questions before you submit your comment. You can see here. And when you submit your comment will appear on the map, but it will not display the demographic questions. So You can click on other comments and read what other folks are saying. So now you can click submit and the map will refresh and show your comment. And when you're done, you can use this home button that looks like a house that will bring you back to the full county view. Let me close out of this. So that is how you navigate the place type map and add a comment. Now we will transition to commenting on the place type guide. So to comment on the place type guide, you will click learn more. Next to the draft place type guide engagement button, there's a brief survey at the top of the page if you have feedback on any of the place types that you've read. I'll just show you the survey here. It's very quick. Also, you can read in detail about every place type on the map, on the place type guide page below. Again, the place type guide acts as a key for the place type map and provides detail on the characteristics for each place type in Durham. So now going back to the main web page one last time, just to look at the resident engagement toolkit. The Resident Engagement Toolkit is a tool we hope that you will use to help us reach other community members. Since this engagement is geographically specific and covers all of Durham, we really need your help to share information and encourage others to provide their feedback on the place type map and guide as well. The Resident Engagement Toolkit page has downloads of flyers and an activity to engage other residents on the map and the guide. And this work is completely voluntary, but will help us ensure we hear from a wide range of residents in this engagement phase. And actually, to encourage folks to use this toolkit before engagement closes, we're doing a drawing for a $25 gift card to a local business every Friday through the end of January to all those who participate. So going back to the Social Pinpoint homepage, I just want to say thank you so much for learning how to provide feedback on the comprehensive plan for this phase of engagement. The feedback period, again, closes on January 31st, and we really look forward to hearing your input. I want to see if there are any questions on the map tool before we move on for discussion. Trying to catch up on the chat as well. Again, this meeting is being recorded, so if you do have any questions that pop up as you're trying to do this, you can always refer back to this meeting recording or any of the other community meetings. And also we have in the Resident Engagement Toolkit a tutorial for how to make a comment on the map. Wonderful. I'm not seeing any more hands raised. We could We have a question from Constance. What happens if a person has engaged in feedback at an earlier engagement survey? Will their comments be considered more than once? That's a really good question. So that's also kind of why we collect demographic data. So we can see if the same person is responding multiple times. And oh, yes. Are you talking about like submitting multiple surveys? So these are different questions than previous rounds, but if there's a person who's submitting multiple surveys or multiple comments, that's kind of how we're differentiating through those demographic questions. Let's see. Okay, we also have a hand raised. Hillary, I'm asking you to unmute. Let's try that. There we go.
Hi, everyone. I just have a quick question. I know that the map is not accessible. That's a given, but is the survey accessible? And well, that's the first question. Is the survey accessible?
Yes, the survey is accessible. Are you talking about the place type guide survey?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, all
so,
surveys plus all surveys. Yeah.
Yes, so our team works with, we actually just developed an accessibility checklist to ensure ADA and Spanish language accessibility, and we have used that for all the surveys that we've created, all the materials that we've created that we can.
Perfect.
Mhm.
The next question is, I did fill out my survey with accommodation of accessibility through Lisa. Not survey, but place type, the input, but I would like to get a survey as well.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely work with you to get you that survey.
And then two other quick things. So a lot of the URLs are extremely long, and I've been working on accessibility, not just for people with disabilities, but in general. So there are things called URL shorteners. And I really would advise, it would make it easier. So it basically says what it is. Do you know what I'm saying? The words are used, and then this is used basically for, like it would say survey to map, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Instead of the HTTP, and my screen reader is reading that whole URL. It's huge. It's good for everybody, sighted and unsighted. Additionally, what about the water bill as a way to communicate with everybody using, I've noticed that when people communicate through the water bill, they use those long URLs. What about using the water bill and using a shorter URL?
Yes, we do use the water bill, and that is a great suggestion, Hillary. We can definitely work on shortening our URLs. We have come a long way, but we have a lot to still learn. So we will definitely take a look at that and work on shortening our URLs for.
The only reason is if somebody's trying to type that in from their water bill, it's phenomenally difficult. Yeah, that's all.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Awesome. Let's see. Okay, we have another question. Is the place type map just a starting point, an inventory from which the plan will influence future changes based on feedback and the values of the new plan? So the place type map is one part of the comprehensive plan. There will be other parts, as I mentioned, the policies and the policy working groups that I know, Ethel, you are a part of, will help to be another part of the comprehensive plan. And again, this is just the first iteration of engagement on the place type map. So after this engagement phase ends, there will be further iterations and revisions to the place type map. And I'll also just add to that that question, Ethel, that once the comprehensive plan is adopted, there will be further changes to policies and programs within the city and county, and also to our unified development ordinance as well. So great question. Thank you. And I see another question. I'd like to participate, but I don't know how to get the website copied from the chat to my desktop. We will be following up with everyone on this call who registered tonight with the links to the social pinpoint site and information you need to participate. Thank you all for the great discussion. Are there any last questions? There is a question, what happens if the only feedback from a community is they want no changes? That's a really good question. As I kind of mentioned earlier, there are some places in the community that we expect will not change as much as others. And so that could very well be the case in some circumstances. With that being said, we have to weigh our professional expertise along with all of the comments and feedback that we have received from the community. And so that is a potential outcome, or some places may change slower than others. That's a very possible outcome. Wonderful. Oh. We have one more question before we pass off for discussion time. Could the value of less impervious surface become a guiding objective to govern future land use or modification? So I think that's a really good question. A lot of comments that we've heard back throughout our engagement on our goals and objectives have been to improve green spaces, add more greenery to areas, and reduce the amount of impervious surfaces. So that is one objective that kind of drives our land use planning, and will definitely be a part of the plan. So I think it's time to hand it off to Lisa, who will be leading us through our discussion this evening. Thank you all for the great comments, suggestions, and discussion.
Thanks, Brooke. So today we've talked at a high level about what the comprehensive plan is, about why it's important, and specifically about the place types, which is the focus of the engagement that is going on through the end of this month. Brooke also just shared with us a walkthrough of the map tool, and now we'd like to spend just a little bit of time basically having a condensed version of the kind of discussion and input that we hope that folks will provide through this tool and this engagement opportunity. So our discussion today will be focused on the general area of West Durham. Don't worry too much about the exact boundary. It's just a general reference, basically meaning any of the area west of downtown Durham. To get us grounded, I'd like to encourage everyone to close their eyes and think about the space and the land that comes to mind when you think of West Durham or of your neighborhood. Maybe imagine that you're walking through your community and you're looking at the land and the space around you. What do you see when you look and move around the area? What patterns are there? What sticks out to you in terms of how land is being used? There might be some taller buildings, some shorter buildings, some that are closer together, some further apart, maybe places with few or no buildings at all. Some places and land may have changed a lot in your experience, in recent memory in some cases. So you can go ahead and open your eyes now. And to start, we'd just like to ask a question that will also be dropping in the chat. To get us started, we want to ask, what changes to how land in your community is being used have you seen? What change would you like to see? And we encourage you to be specific. This part of the plan is talking about specific pieces of property, and every property in Durham will have a designation on the place type map, which reflects the vision of how we want that place to be, how it should change or stay the same. So again, that question is, what changes to how land in your community is being used have you seen? What change would you like to see? And be specific if you can. So I saw some hands go up and then go back down. So if you were trying to raise your hand, if you want to try again, we can unmute you. But I'll give folks some time to put things in the chat. And again, you can feel free to use the raise hand button if you'd like to share out loud. All right, Hillary, I have unmuted you.
Hi, so I've lived here for about 45 years. It was predominantly an African-American community when I moved in. That has gentrified. I'm talking about the residential portion. Along West Chapel Hill Street, there was a big hubbub and a big to-do regarding public parking and the use of that public parking being purchased by the Durham Food Co-op and Duke. And I fought hard with some other people to ensure that, yes, there was a rezone to commercial, but we wanted to put covenants in place that restricted the height of the building, because West Chapel Hill Street, I think of this neighborhood, sunshine pours down when we walk down our streets. I think of community here. I think of mom and pop stores. And no high rise should be here. So though it was rezoned to commercial, we wanted to ensure that it stayed lower because all the sun is being taken away. And I also like the fact that smaller stores can move in. And so the UDO, I don't know how it was changed, but because the parking was removed and purchased, somehow planning somehow made it possible that smaller mom and pops can come in here. So basically, I would like to stay also. Somebody had mentioned that what we have here is this huge, the city's graveyard is borders on Kent Street around where we walk. And they removed the barriers around that and took all the fencing down. And it's quite amazing. Somebody had mentioned to me, why doesn't the city take that, or somebody take that to developer and put high rise on it? And I did talk to Lisa about that. She said that'd be very difficult, but I have to bring it up because if somebody says it, it could be done. So I hope that doesn't happen. What else? The traffic, the TIAs, the traffic impact studies, what was it called? Traffic impact studies were sort of lifted in during our time, and because of developers not wanting it, because it holds up a lot of development. And I think that needs to be revisited in areas that are very focused on walking. And that's the only last thing I have to say is we need pharmacy here. We have food, we have bank, BBDT, we have pretty much everything. What we're missing is pharmacy. But other than that, that's it. I'm signing off.
Thanks so much for sharing, Hillary. We appreciate it. All right, we've had a couple of comments in the chat that I'll share. We've got, so seeing lots of high density, high rise, very expensive rental cost apartments, and loss of green space near my community. We've also got, I'd like to see much higher density for housing along main corridors like Club, Broad, etc. We have such a housing shortage. Our primary priority should be increasing the housing supply. I think that's a great point, Charles, and one that we heard a lot about in engagement so far. And a lot of what folks shared is we want more housing, but we want to make sure that that housing is accessible and affordable and fits within the character of our community. So more housing, but let's try and make sure that it's really serving our community. We've also got, would like to see more preservation of green space and walking trails. Yes, that's come up a lot and is definitely reflected in the environment goal and related objectives. Let's see, I live in the northern part of Trinity Park. I've seen little change apart from a few home remodels and replacements. I'd like to see more multifamily housing added and the reintroduction of small commercial in the neighborhood, such as a gathering place to get coffee or ice cream. These are great points. One of the things that we've heard a lot and is the reasoning behind our neighborhood services place type is, as I think mentioned earlier in the meeting tonight, a lot of folks want to have access to some small commercial, something that's not going to be intrusive, but that gives people opportunities to walk to things within their neighborhood or at the edges of their neighborhood. So that's something we've heard consistently. We've got another vote for seeing more preservation of green space and wildlife corridors. It's great. That's really important. Something that's come up a lot as folks have seen more development happening and some of our green space that is not protected disappearing because of that. So that's something we've heard from a lot of folks. So I'll give folks a few more moments if you've got responses to that question. And then we got a long one here. And then we can, if we have time, get into another question or two before we close out. So let's see if I can read this. We've got, I've seen very little change in the greater Lakewood area, just a lot of infill. I've been working around the Lakewood Shopping Center, organizing businesses, renters, and homeowners. Basically, my efforts did not gain visibility and support from the Inter-Neighborhood Council. The shops at Lakewood is so unattractive. I've worked for the Scrap Exchange Board, the Lakewood Park Community Association, Partners Against Crime 3 district, the Durham Community Land Trustees, etc., the place is still visually unappealing. It took forever to get a sidewalk along Chapel Hill Road in front of the shops. Wonder why it's been so difficult. We've had zoning changes to neighborhood commercial, but is that the sticking point as introduced by our office spaces on Chapel Hill Road? I think what you're bringing up is another thing that we heard a lot in engagement so far, that there are places where we have development of some sort in the community currently, where there's opportunity for us to, so not just infill residential on vacant lots within neighborhoods, but look at where there are parking lots or other commercial that is maybe older or vacant, where there's an opportunity to infill some other or additional uses. So looking at possibilities for including housing in some of those cases, but making sure that we're also focusing on getting commercial and services that folks really need to get to in their week or in their day. We've also got here, what about neighborhood garden developments in areas that are food deserts? That's a great suggestion. We've definitely seen a lot of folks kind of creating kind of a grassroots effort to do community gardens. Concerns about food deserts in the community have come up a lot. And so that's a big part of what we want to look at in terms of the policy work that's being developed, looking at healthy and affordable food access throughout our community so that we don't have food deserts. Let's see, great point, Lisa. Housing costs as much as nearly $500,000 beside $50,000 homes. Those houses do not fit in our neighborhood. Yeah, there's been a lot of concern from folks about how some housing that's being built, some new housing that's being built, does not fit within the character and the scale of neighborhoods that are existing. A question here, how does the plan take into account the increase in traffic caused by the addition of high density housing in established residential neighborhoods? The plan has a lovely utopian vision, but it does not take into account the reality that not everyone will suddenly abandon their cars. There's a property at 6509 Garrett that is on the plan as being apartments and townhomes. Garrett Road is already at 135% of capacity, and the Valley Brook neighborhood is nearly impossible to exit during the part of rush hour when school is starting. In a continuation, the neighborhood is downhill of the property in question. An addition of buildings and impermeable surfaces to that property is going to cause all kinds of drainage problems to Valley Brook neighborhood homes that are downhill of the property. Yeah, that's another thing that we've heard a lot, is making sure that we understand and are proactively looking at how new development impacts, in particular, the issue of flooding has come up as a concern from a number of residents. And I think we have an opportunity with the map to look at whether there are better ways that we can transition from existing neighborhoods to things where there's more density or intensity. And so that may be a place we'd love a comment on the map, but we can also take your comment here from the meeting and make sure that that's reflected from your description. Great point. Apartments create mega traffic concerns. Yeah, we know there are concerns about traffic. There has been, I think, a lot of increase in traffic volume. And so we really need to, both for that reason, but also because it's something that we've heard very clearly from folks, that we need to make sure that we're connecting the places that we do have, and that we're doing a better job of placing the different uses in our community so that people have a chance. Maybe you can't get rid of your car. We don't expect everyone will be doing that, but that you can make some trips that get you access to some of the things that you need, or in some cases, maybe provide access to jobs for folks in some proximity where you're able to use, you're able to walk or to bike or to ride a scooter or to take transit reasonably, rather than that being something that does not feel like a reasonable choice for folks, given either the safety and infrastructure or the time that it would take. We have one more comment about the Garrett Road property. We stopped 37 townhouses 3 years ago for the reasons around traffic and flooding. We really need to look at this because high vertical development will also block the sun to many houses. Well, thanks for that. We really appreciate the specificity of your input on that, and we'll make sure that we get that reflected as a comment on the map. And yes, Hillary, I see your comment, traffic impact study requirements. And one of the things that Hillary and I talked about is looking at how we can revise our traffic impact analysis to focus on how we safely move people around our community, and not solely focus on how motor vehiclists can move as unimpeded as possible, because there are real safety concerns for folks that don't have a car or aren't using a car. We also got impervious surfaces and affect flooding, as well as runoff and water table and wildlife. Yes, absolutely. And we've got some agreement around the traffic impact study requirement. These are all great. I appreciate all of the comments that folks have shared so far. Let's see, one question here. Are traffic impact studies under the purview of the planning department? Traffic impact analysis is something that is talked about in the Unified Development Ordinance, which contains all of the rules around how development occurs. So it's something that is assessed and implemented alongside the transportation staff for the city. And then in cases where it's a state maintained road, with the North Carolina Department of Transportation. So there's some connection with planning, but we're not the folks primarily reviewing traffic impact analyses. I've got another comment here. My sense is the status quo is neighbors who have time and agency to speak up will fight most changes, leaving many other neighborhoods to feel the brunt of development and gentrification. Most neighborhood meetings are filled with people fighting change. How will this process ensure that the engagement is actually representative of Durham, even considering that the majority may be ambivalent to the changes? This is a great point and great question. We have been working with folks in the community in order to try and remove more barriers to participation. And in some cases, what that's meant is providing stipends to residents, particularly residents who past planning decisions and actions have been harmed by, and their communities left out of being able to benefit from the changes in growth in Durham. We're asking for their help in each phase of the engagement to help us hear from the folks they're in community with. Many times folks don't trust local government because of the decisions and the ways that those decisions have impacted many communities of color or low-income communities in Durham. And so we've been working with folks in order to have them help us bring information and get input from folks in the community that we wouldn't hear from otherwise. So that's been a big priority for us. And it's another thing that we are learning about, trying to improve, and are always open to suggestions on how we can do that better. So thanks for asking that. Folks are welcome to add more things in the chat. We will make sure to capture all of that before we close. But since we're close to 8 o'clock, I just want to share a few things to close out our time together this evening. If there's any other questions that come up while I'm doing so, I'll try to address them at the end. But thanks everyone for your input tonight. Just a couple of quick things we want to share. As a reminder, this phase of engagement closes in just a couple of weeks on January 31st. Once this engagement closes, we'll be compiling everything that we heard in all of the different formats of engagement and working to document that and then revise the place type map. The next phase of engagement, which will be beginning in the spring, will focus on getting community input on draft policy recommendations for the new plan. Our planning team has committed to the City Council and County Commissioners that will work to understand who we're hearing from as we do all of our engagement for the comp plan. This is super important so that we can know who we're hearing from and who we're not hearing from, so that we can adjust our engagement and outreach approaches as we go to try and make sure that we're reaching those folks and engaging a group of people that is reflective of the full diversity of our community. Our team will share a link to the demographics survey in the chat right now. We'd really appreciate it if you take a couple minutes to fill that out so we can understand who we're reaching in these meetings. We really appreciate it. As part of that survey, we'd also like to hear any thoughts, feedback, or reflections or recommendations you have related to how this meeting went and how we can improve in the future. We're committed to taking your feedback seriously, and we'll make changes and adjustments as we go if we hear things aren't working as well as they could. We will be sharing, we have been recording this meeting. We'll be making that available on the city YouTube page, and we'll be sending out a link to that recording as part of a follow-up email to everyone registered for this evening's meeting. Finally, we'd like to leave you for one last plug for getting involved in the process, for getting folks you know involved as well. Our team is dropping a link again to the place type map that Brooke walked us through. Again, we'll share this in a follow-up email as well. Please share this information and opportunity with your friends or family or neighbors. We'd also love for you to take a look at the map yourself, or to bring the resident engagement toolkit to a group that you know and encourage them to explore the map and give feedback as well. We're also providing a link to the resident engagement toolkit, which has links and downloadable options for everything you need to get involved. As we've shared, this opportunity for engagement closes January 31st, but there will be additional engagement for this plan, both around the map we've discussed today and the policies that we've mentioned are under development. So all of those links that are being put in the chat will also be made available through a follow-up email. So if you are having any difficulty accessing the links in the chat, you'll receive those as follow-up as well. And I saw one other question. Will the place type map comments and subsequent written plan negate any yet unstarted changes to areas near to or near established neighborhoods? Let me see if I understand this correctly. So I think I'm understanding the place type map and the new comprehensive plan is not in effect until it's adopted. So one of the reasons that we're trying to push through and do the best engagement that we can while we're all dealing with a pandemic is because we know that as the longer it takes to replace this plan with one that is more reflective of our community's priorities, we're losing opportunities as development is proposed and approved in the meantime. So I just want to make clear that as soon as the plan is adopted, we'll be starting to make changes around regulations, and everything in the plan will help to inform decisions around proposed zoning changes. But until we get the plan approved, the limited amount of consideration of the current plan is around how proposed developments are related to and in line with the adopted goals and objectives, since those are currently adopted. So thanks for asking that question, Lisa. With that, I just want to thank you all again for coming this evening, for sharing your perspectives, for taking time out of your busy lives and everything else that's going on in the world. So on behalf of our comprehensive plan team, thanks again for joining us, and I hope that you all have a great evening.